US President Donald Trump's trade war, the Chinese government has asked its carriers to stop taking delivery of Boeing aircraft. China retaliated on the US with tariffs of 125%. And for the airlines...
Can you believe it? Nearly 2 million commercial aircraft orders may go unfulfilled in 2025, primarily due to a 200% import tariff recently reactivated by Donald Trump. The move, intended to punish American companies shifting production overseas, now threatens the very heart of U.S. aviation. And no one is feeling the blow harder than Boeing, a company long considered the pride of American aerospace, now pushed deeper into a death spiral by its own government. In late 2024, Boeing announced a strategic shift, moving part of its 737 MAX production and interior cabin components to Mexico to cut labor costs and tap into trade advantages in Latin America and Asia. But no sooner had this plan gone public than Trump hit back hard, with a punitive 200% tariff on any aircraft manufactured outside U.S. borders but sold domestically. What does this mean? A Boeing 737 MAX, which typically costs around $105 million to produce, would be slapped with taxes that inflate the price tag to over $315 million if sold in the U.S. That's enough to make even industry giants like United and Delta think twice. In March 2025, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, warned that unprecedented price hikes could force U.S. airlines to suspend or delay more than 36% of their current aircraft orders. Trump claims the tariff is designed to protect American workers. But the real-world result? Within just 48 hours of the announcement, Boeing's stock plunged by 8.2% on the NYSE, wiping out over $17 billion in market capitalization. Investment giants like BlackRock and Vanguard immediately began reducing their holdings in Boeing. And that shock didn't stop there. It rippled throughout the aerospace supply chain, hitting General Electric, GE, which provides engines, and Spirit Aerosystems, a key fuselage supplier. Meanwhile, Boeing's global competitors, Airbus in Europe and COMAC in China, are quietly celebrating. Airbus reported a 25.6% global order increase in Q1 2025, and COMAC, backed by Beijing, signed multiple new aircraft deals with carriers in Africa and Southeast Asia. Boeing, on the other hand, is caught in a storm. Production disrupted, contracts lost, and trapped between domestic protectionism and brutal international competition. According to Bloomberg Intelligence, if the 200% tariff stays in place through the remainder of 2025, Boeing could see its annual revenue drop by 34%, and an estimated 11,000 jobs could be cut across its major U.S. facilities in Washington, South Carolina, and Missouri. These aren't abstract numbers. These are real families facing joblessness. And Boeing isn't the only one suffering. GE Aerospace, its key engine partner, reported a 14% decline in engine orders in March 2025. Logistics giants FedEx and UPS, both major customers of Boeing's 767F and 777F cargo planes, have put their fleet expansion plans on hold, citing unmanageable aircraft costs. Now, under Trump's directive, manufacturing giants are being forced to pick a side, either accept astronomical operating costs and stay in the domestic market, or shift to exports and forfeit their U.S. presence altogether. Across the globe, Airbus is expanding its Shanghai plant to meet surging Chinese demand. Meanwhile, COMAC has already delivered its first batch of C919 aircraft to African carriers, at just 65% of Boeing's price point. So let's be honest, what Trump calls a protectionist solution is quickly becoming a full-scale economic nightmare. By slapping a 200% tax on key U.S.-designed products simply because they are assembled overseas, the Trump administration is effectively cutting off the wings of one of America's top export sectors, civil aviation. The question now is, can Boeing survive this storm? Without a policy reversal from the White House or Congress, the company risks further market erosion, mass layoffs, and the possibility of retreating from its own domestic market. Meanwhile, global competitors aren't just watching, they're advancing. Airbus, COMAC, and Embraer, Brazil, are collectively nibbling away at every corner of the market Boeing once dominated. Trump's 200% tariff isn't supporting American business, as he claims. It's a death sentence for the very companies trying to compete in a globalized economy. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. The trade war has only started, and behind the scenes, more secrets, political motives, and global consequences are quietly unfolding. Stay tuned. What's coming next could change everything.
China is refusing to negotiate with President Trump on U.S. tariffs. In fact, the nation is taking the trade war to a new height, blow to America's largest exporter, but also to the U.S. economy.
Shocker in the global economy, China is unleashing a new wave of trade warfare, targeting American companies with ruthless precision. As both nations brace for unprecedented escalation, the power struggle between Beijing and Washington reaches a boiling point. Is this the moment U.S. economic dominance finally gets rattled, or will China's gamble backfire in spectacular fashion? From the heart of Beijing's political machine to boardrooms in Silicon Valley, this is a crisis where neither side can blink. As of this week, China has begun wielding non-tariff measures, applying crippling pressure on American businesses in a strategic counteroffensive. The world is watching. Could this be the beginning of a game-changing shift in the U.S.-China balance of power? To understand the urgency, let's rewind to how China has weaponized its regulatory arsenal. Over recent days, the Chinese government has deployed non-tariff measures, regulations, restrictions, and government orders specifically aimed at American companies. It's an escalation that goes far beyond tariffs, targeting vulnerabilities that the U.S. may not be prepared to defend. This time, Beijing isn't just playing defense. It's on the offensive, determined to exploit American weaknesses. Analysts warn that Beijing is far better prepared for confrontation than it was just a few years ago. Unlike the early years of the trade war in 2018, China now has a playbook designed for endurance. The consensus among experts is that Beijing is better prepared for the trade war than it was in 2018, targeting U.S. vulnerabilities and showing more willingness to endure economic hardship. And China's resolve is steeled by an unmistakable wave of nationalism, motivating its companies, big and small, to dig in and fight back against what they see as American aggression. There's more. According to the New York Times' Nicholas Kristof, President Trump might soon become desperate to resolve the trade conflict. The Atlantic is even blunter, speculating that Trump will ultimately be compelled to retreat. Combine these warnings with precise actions on the ground, and the stakes for U.S. businesses are sky high. China is reportedly considering tightening the screws even further by targeting marquee American brands. Tesla and other high-profile companies could soon find their access sharply curtailed as Beijing turns up the heat. Here's a twist that no one foresaw. The Chinese government has given marching orders to major e-commerce platforms like Alibaba and JD.com. Their mission: shift exporters away from vulnerable foreign markets that could become collateral in the trade war and focus instead on boosting sales at home. It's a bold move, meant to fire up domestic consumption after years of sluggish growth. But there's a catch. For many Chinese companies, foreign customers have been a lifeline, and the domestic market is still wary, with cautious spending patterns threatening to blunt the impact of this policy. China's campaign to stimulate its homegrown economy is not just economic policy, it's an ideological offensive. Nationalism is fueling the resolve on the Chinese side. This is more than numbers on a balance sheet. It's a story of pride and survival. For every new restriction on American trade, there's a surge of patriotic energy compelling Chinese executives to prove that they can outlast and outperform their Washington counterparts. It's a blow-for-blow duel between the world's two economic giants. Supporters of the U.S. response frame this as a necessary confrontation, arguing that American leadership needs to stand its ground and defend innovation, jobs, and fair competition. But critics say the administration is walking straight into a strategic nightmare. As Roger Karma wrote for The Atlantic, if Donald Trump were trying to lose his trade war with China, it's hard to see what he would be doing differently. The implication? Every move Washington makes might be playing right into Beijing's hands. So where does this high-stakes war leave the rest of the world? And could the current strategy set off economic shockwaves far beyond U.S. and Chinese shores? Fact: China is better prepared, and it's willing to withstand short-term pain, backed by both nationalist fervor and government direction. Fact: American companies are more vulnerable than ever, facing regulatory pressure and the looming threat of losing access to the Chinese marketplace. With both governments doubling down, the likelihood of a quick resolution looks slimmer by the hour. Unanswered questions swirl in every newsroom and boardroom. Will U.S. policy break China's resolve, or is America about to face economic consequences it never anticipated? Are both nations barreling toward a trade meltdown that could undermine the global order? What side are you on in this escalating economic showdown?
The old relationship we had with the United States, tight security and military cooperation, is over.
Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion into British Columbia is finally complete.
We will respond forcefully.
Imagine filling up your gas tank like any other day. But this time, the price suddenly jumps to $4 a gallon. Not because of Middle Eastern conflict, not because of OPEC tightening supplies, but because of Canada, the friendly neighbor of the United States, which has just rerouted nearly 900,000 barrels of oil per day away from the U.S. to Asia, especially to China, Japan, and India. This didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years of escalating trade and political tension between the U.S. and Canada, starting in 2018, when President Donald Trump imposed a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports, most of which came from Canada. In retaliation, Ottawa imposed $16.6 billion in counter tariffs targeting U.S. goods such as whiskey, ketchup, orange juice, and motorcycles. This tit-for-tat laid the groundwork for a deeper rupture in the bilateral energy relationship. But the real turning point came in 2025, when Canada completed its $13 billion expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, increasing capacity to nearly 890,000 barrels per day, allowing oil to be exported directly to the Pacific Ocean without relying on U.S. transport or refining infrastructure. In 2024, the U.S. imported 6.3 million barrels per day of crude oil, with Canada alone supplying more than 4 million barrels daily, or about 61% of total U.S. crude imports, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA. Most of this oil is heavy crude from Alberta's oil sands, precisely what American refineries along the Gulf Coast and Midwest are built to process. As Canada pivots toward Asia, American refineries are in turmoil. In early 2025, refining capacity utilization at key U.S. facilities dropped from 89% to 71% in just 1 month. Nationwide, gas prices have risen modestly, with the national average reaching around 3 BOMBSHELL 15-gallon chale. However, in states like California, prices have surged to approximately 4.84 a gallon, and some rural areas may experience even higher rates. Beyond oil, Canada is a critical electricity supplier to the U.S. In 2023, Canada exported approximately 49.4 terawatt-hours (TWh) of electricity to the United States, valued at $4.3 billion CAD. However, due to drought conditions affecting hydropower generation, U.S. imports from Canada decreased significantly, from 42 TWh in 2022 to 15 TWh in 2023. Hydropower from Quebec and Ontario supports states like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. Ontario Premier Doug Ford recently warned that if trade relations deteriorate further, Canada may impose a 25% surcharge or suspend exports altogether. The result? Rolling blackouts, increased strain on U.S. grids, and double-digit jumps in electricity prices during the peak winter heating season. Canada's energy shift is not just retaliation, it's strategy. In March 2025, Canada exported 8 million barrels of oil to the European Union, double the volume from the previous quarter. This came after signing long-term contracts with China National Petroleum Corporation and Indian Oil Corporation, securing sales of 325,000 barrels per day for the next 15 years, free from the volatility of U.S. politics. More than just oil, Canada is rich in critical minerals essential to the global energy transition. Nickel, 6th largest producer globally for EV batteries. Uranium, 2nd largest exporter for nuclear power. Hydropower, 3rd largest producer globally for clean electricity. If Canada limits uranium exports, the U.S. would face a nuclear fuel shortage, jeopardizing over 90 nuclear reactors, which provide nearly 20% of U.S. electricity. The economic repercussions are already showing. Goldman Sachs has revised down its U.S. growth outlook for 2025 to 1.7% and raised the risk of a recession to 45%, citing the impact of trade tensions and tightening financial conditions. GDP in Q2 2025 if Canadian energy exports to the U.S. continue to drop. That would mark the weakest quarterly growth since the pandemic recovery began. Meanwhile, Canada has cut Tesla from its EV rebate program, halting $43 million in federal subsidies, after accusing the automaker of manipulating bulk purchases. In retaliation, British Columbia announced new tolls on U.S. commercial trucks passing through the province en route to Alaska, affecting more than $700 million in annual trade. As U.S. shushes, oil companies scramble for new supply from nations like Venezuela, Nigeria, and Iran, each bringing geopolitical and logistical risks. Canada quietly consolidates its role as a global swing supplier, setting energy prices rather than chasing them. Canada is no longer a silent supplier. It's now an architect of the new global energy order. America's dominance is fading, and Washington is no longer the sole shot caller on energy. One thing is certain, the global energy storm has only just begun.
The protest is a big shout, urging Brazil, which will host COP30.
A shockwave just rippled through global climate diplomacy. Brazil and China have joined forces in a blockbuster agreement ahead of COP30. Unprecedented synergy between two of the world's largest economies is raising the stakes for the entire planet. Is this a turning point for international cooperation, or the opening volley in a new struggle over green technology? As of April 20th, 2025, the governments of Brazil and China announced a sweeping joint commitment in preparation for the upcoming COP30 climate summit. With world leaders locked in gridlock and accusations swirling about who's to blame for climate inaction, these two giants have thrown down a dramatic challenge. Are we witnessing the birth of a true global alliance, or setting the stage for rivalry on a planetary scale? Both Brazil and China made their position crystal clear. Defenderam o sistema multilateral como o meio mais eficaz para enfrentar desafios globais, incluindo comércio e mudanças climáticas. Their official declaration doubles down on the multilateral system as the only way forward against existential threats like climate catastrophe and economic uncertainty. As other powers threaten to turn inward, this strategic partnership broadcasts a different message, a bet on internationalism to tackle humanity's ultimate crises. The moves didn't stop there. Brazil's Minister of Mines and Energy, Alexandre Silveira, traveled directly to Shenzhen for high-stakes meetings with Oscar Su, Vice President of BYD in Latin America, a global titan in electric vehicle and battery production. Both sides locked eyes on Brazil's potential to become a dominant player in the high-value lithium and battery chain. BYD's ambitions are bold. A BYD manifesto intenção de ampliar sua atuação no país com foco em minerais estratégicos e produção local de baterias. This isn't just about investment dollars, it's a blueprint to transform Brazil's resource riches into cutting-edge technology at home. Minister Silveira put it plainly. O objetivo é aumentar o volume de concessionárias no Brasil. Eles fizeram compromisso de investir na cadeia mineral do Brasil. Se eles conseguirem fazer parceria com empresas nacionais no setor de mineração de lítio, eles vão fazer a cadeia produtiva de baterias no Brasil. In other words, if Chinese and Brazilian industry can forge a partnership, Brazil could rocket from raw material supplier to a central node in the future of clean energy manufacturing. That's not just a business deal, that's a tectonic shift in the global race for battery dominance. Meanwhile, the momentum is building on all fronts. Silveira's visit is setting up the stage for an imminent, high-profile visit by President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to China expected in May. The world is watching, waiting for the likely formalization of a memorandum on homegrown battery production. But is this surging optimism based on reality, or will political headwinds and vested interests stall the grand vision? With COP30 locked for Belém, Brazil in 2025, expectations are soaring for tangible progress. There's talk not just of lofty pledges, but tres entregas concretas, recommendations from bilateral technical groups, global presentations of existing solutions, and ironclad commitments by the private sector to slash greenhouse gas emissions. Dan Yoshpe, high-level climate champion for COP30, hailed these efforts, saying, "Esse trabalho é fundamental. Temos ações mapeadas que podem fazer muita diferença em setores-chave da economia." The message is relentless. Real plans, real impact in industries that could help rewrite the planet's climate destiny. Yet behind the headlines, a deeper battle is taking shape. Opportunity versus danger. Supporters hail Brazil's ascendancy as a model for sustainable growth, with new jobs, tech transfer, and global prestige. As Musa, another key climate figure, stated, "O Brasil casa perfeitamente com o tema da sustentabilidade. Nosso desenvolvimento pode mudar se uma estratégia sustentável estiver ao centro, seja nos sistemas alimentares ou nas energias renováveis." Wouters, but critics want proof this isn't just another round of greenwashing or a backdoor for outside exploitation of Brazil's precious resources. The tension is real. Will this partnership empower local industries or hollow them out for foreign gain? The stakes couldn't be higher. Power, technology, and global influence hang in the balance as Brazil and China shake hands on a new climate playbook. Will their alliance drive the world toward genuine solutions or aggravate the divides that threaten us all? As the road to COP30 heats up, only one thing is certain. The whole world is watching, and every move could set the tone for decades to come. What do you think? Is this earthquake in global climate politics the real breakthrough or just another power struggle wearing a green mask?